Hi, I'm J.A. Rock and welcome to this week's Rockin Read Aloud. Today I'm going to be reading from the Grand Ballast. This is a dystopian horror type novel. It was a big passion project for me, so I'm really happy to get to share a little bit of it with you today. The plot is a little complicated, so if you'll bear with me, I will hopefully explain it in a way that makes at least a little bit of sense. The book takes place in a future where everyone is bored, basically. There's this prevailing sense throughout humanity that everything has been done before, there's nothing left that's new and exciting. Technology and art have kind of ground to halts. People still do go about their lives, go about their jobs, but they just don't feel things very deeply. And things that are still interesting to people are sex and violence, naturally. So one form of art that is popular in this world, they're called X shows. And these are different themed shows performed throughout the world that depict live acts of sex and violence, often together. So the main character in the Grand Ballast is Bodhi Martin. And Bodhi is a dancer who still does feel things very deeply. And he believes that art holds the key to getting people to wake up and feel things again. So he dances at a tiny theater for very little money, tiny crowds, but he's very passionate about it. And he meets Kilroy Ballast, who is a complete psychopath, to put it nicely. But Bodhi doesn't know that yet. So Kilroy seems to believe in the same things that Bodhi does, that art is important, and he encourages Bodhi to dance. And Bodhi falls in what he thinks is love with Kilroy, kind of ignoring the fact that Kilroy treats him really badly and mind-fucks him at every opportunity. Kilroy eventually becomes the creator of a very popular X show called the Grand Ballast. And this is like a 1930s style circus full of erotic nightmares. And Kilroy uses Bodhi's guilt over a past incident to manipulate Bodhi into joining the circus as a performer. Kilroy treats the performers terribly. He keeps them drugged. There's this drug called the haze that they're all on, and it keeps them compliant and keeps them from rebelling. So Bodhi becomes just like all the other performers. He's in this constant drug-induced haze. He does whatever Kilroy tells him until he and Kilroy attend a performance of a rival X show where the finale is a snuff performance. And during the finale, Bodhi breaks out of the haze long enough to see what's happening and rushes down and rescues the performer. So this creates a big PR nightmare for Kilroy. And Kilroy ends up buying the performer from this rival show and employing him with the Grand Ballast. So I hope that made some sense. That's where I'm going to be starting today. It's shortly after the rescue, so all the circus performers are back on the train. They're heading to their next destination to perform. They've got the boy in the water, the boy of the water, this rescued performer in the equipment car, and Bodhi and Kilroy are in Kilroy's private car discussing Bodhi's actions. So this is just a sequence of two very short scenes. The first one is Bodhi and Kilroy, and then in the second one you will meet the other circus performers. So thank you again for tuning in. Thank you so much for the blogs that have hosted me on this tour. If you want to see other tour videos, you can go to www.jarockauthor.com. Here is the Grand Ballast. Bodhi followed Kilroy into the car. Immediately thought about the gun. How had he not known Kilroy kept one in here? Kilroy took out the cigarette case, retrieved a cigarette and stuck it behind his ear, then set the tin on the corner of the desk. The train began to move, and Bodhi had to be careful not to let the rhythm lull him. There were still traces of the haze in his body, and he was in danger of sinking under the drug's spell once more. Kilroy picked up a newspaper from his desk. "Mr. Lyne gave me this." He handed Bodhi a copy of the X-Show Rustler. The front page featured a picture of Kilroy and Bodhi at the Hydra Arena. Kilroy was holding on to Bodhi, and Bodhi was clutching his cheek. "Ballast strikes star," read the headline. Bodhi continued reading. Kilroy Ballast, the X-Show mogul known for keeping his performers under strict control, may have gone too far. Many audiences find Ballast's tough love approach part of his show's allure. The Grand Ballast performers sleep in coffins, are not given time off aside from travel days between shows, and are often beaten for infractions inside and outside of the ring. But the tide might be turning against Mr. Ballast. Yesterday, Ballast and the star of his circus, Bodhi Martin, attended a show at the infamous Hydra Arena. In what some suspect was a publicity stunt, Martin dove into the water during the arena's final act, a snuff performance, and rescued the doomed star. It was no stunt, Emily McCullough, the Hydra Arena's director, said in an interview yesterday. I was as surprised as anyone. McCullough and Ballast are keeping quiet about the agreement they reached, which allowed the arena's Boy of the Water not only to live, but to be transferred into Ballast's employ. But the big attention grabber was a post-rescue incident in which Ballast violently struck Martin across the face. I don't think that's right, said an unnamed spectator. You go to the Grand Ballast, it's fun to see Kilroy whip his boys and girls a little with the ring stick if they ain't getting it right. But to just haul off and slug Bodie like that? I can think of better, expletive obliterated, to do with a face that beautiful. Martin is a huge draw for the Grand Ballast, and continued on page 5. Right under the article was another headline, Hydra Arena Rescue a Publicity Stunt? And in the sidebar, ex-show protests spread from Harkville to mid-country. Kilroy yanked the paper away and set it back on the desk. He looked at Bodie. How do you like that? My hitting you was bigger news to the rustler than the rescue itself. Bodie didn't respond. He was thinking about Harkville, the protests. One corner of Kilroy's mouth jerked up and down almost convulsively. I want to apologize, he said, for striking you. I think it's very sweet you wanted to rescue that boy. Bodie eyed him warily, glanced again at the paper on the desk. What are you hoping, Bodie? That they're on your side? That they think I'm a worm? What will you bet on it? I don't care what they think, Bodie muttered. Kilroy went over to the wall and slapped the red call button. Bodie used the opportunity to steal a cigarette from the tin. Kilroy put in an order to Mr. Line up in the conductor's booth, and a moment later the train began to bump and shake. Kilroy turned his attention back to Bodie. Do you know what I think? I think if you go up against me, you will lose so much more than you even knew was possible. Do you understand? Bodie jerked his head once. Kilroy stood, put on his hat. The turbulence nearly spilled him, but he caught his balance. I'd like to go to the back of the train, to check on your prize. He's not my prize. Kilroy grinned and headed for the back door of the car. All right, then. My prize. You won him for me. Don't, Bodie said before he could stop himself. He couldn't stand the thought of what Kilroy might do to the boy. Kilroy pushed his heels down and spun slowly back around. Bodie softened his voice. Stay with me? Kilroy's expression had a note of hunger in it. He stepped closer to Bodie. Am I yours, Bodie? Do you love me, and is he only a little toy? Bodie tightened his jaw and nodded. Kilroy closed the distance between them, paused suddenly, looking at the cigarette tin. Did you take one of my cigarettes? Bodie tensed, turning his face slightly so the blow would get his cheek and jaw instead of his nose or his eye. But Kilroy didn't hit him. Bodie nodded again, face still tilted away. Kilroy laughed. Look at me. He tugged on Bodie's shoulder. Look at me! You act like I'm going to kill you over a cigarette. Why would I do that? Bodie, you can ask me for a cigarette. He jerked harder on Bodie's shoulder. Ask me. Ask me if you can have a cigarette. Bodie closed his eyes, imagining he was somewhere far away. Ask me. He slowly opened his eyes and met Kilroy's. May I have a cigarette, please? Yes, Kilroy said. Of course you can. Dee and her agent had been waiting in the next town, Moat and Rankle, for 2 days by the time the train arrived. She was standing placidly in the rail yard, wearing a dark blue dress with leaf-patterned lace sleeves when Bodie and the others disembarked. Roulette made kissy noises at her, and she adjusted her wide-brimmed hat and glided forward when she saw Kilroy. Where have you been? Kilroy brushed past her and went to unlock the equipment car. I told you, love, I'd be taking 2 days off. I told you and, Tom, not to arrive until this evening. He pulled the equipment car door open. Bodie watched as a group of hired hands entered the car. They reemerged seconds later, hauling the big top tent and the bucket of pegs, and headed toward the performance area. If they'd been surprised to see the Boy of the Water in the car, they gave no indication.
He didn't tell me,
Dee said. Kilroy turned to her, took her hands. Listen, I really can't be harried right now. I don't have the patience. How would you feel about doing 4 shows here instead of 2? 4 shows? Dee's agent jerked to life several feet away and strode toward Kilroy. We never negotiated 4 shows in Moat and Wrinkle. We're negotiating it now, you fucking soap bubble. Subiata had stopped to listen to the conversation.
4 shows, she hollered. You better mean 1 a day, Kay. My junk can't handle 2.
Yes, Kilroy snapped, letting go of Dee and whirling to Subiata. 1 a fucking day. I need a home base for a few days while I sort something out. Bodhi wondered if what needed to be sorted out was the boy of the water.
I'll have to check with my agent,
Dee said primly. Oh. Subiata rolled her eyes.
She has to check with her agent if she wants to so much as grow a new cunt hair.
She was wearing a black leotard with cutouts in the sides, and Bodhi could see the pink hole under her ribs. Dee glanced at her.
You're crude.
Subiata approached Dee.
Let me ask you something, angel-y thing.
She jerked her thumb toward Kilroy.
Do you get your paychecks? 'Cause the rest of us ain't seen a dime in weeks.
Kilroy swung the ring stick and caught Subiata hard across her bony shoulders. You don't know what you're saying, you burnt-out whore. Subiata glared at him, her wide eyes bulging.
What's the matter, Kil? You ain't making enough to pay us?
Shut your mouth if you know what's good for you. Kilroy started to walk away.
Kil! Give me my money.
Kilroy slowly turned back to her. The others moved to the sidelines. Kilroy strode across the grass and stopped in front of her, but she didn't flinch. He pulled the pearl-handled pistol from his pocket and shoved the barrel into the crater in her side. I wouldn't ask again unless you want me to make this hole 10 times deeper. She stared at Kilroy evenly and didn't say a word, but Bodhi could see her chest rising and falling more rapidly with each second the barrel remained against her skin. Kilroy slowly withdrew the gun and used it to gesture at the rest of the group. Anyone else? Complaints? Concerns? Silence. Kilroy stalked off toward the workers who were putting up the tent. You okay? Roulette asked Subiata very quietly.
I think we need to teach Kilroy a lesson. That's what I think.
She walked a few feet in the direction Kilroy had gone, put her arms up like a sorceress and threw her head back.
He's a liar, she yelled at the sky. He said he had an escape from boredom. He said he had wonders in store.
Be quiet, Roulette snapped. You dumb bitch, be quiet. He'll hear you.
Where are my wonders? Subiata shouted. Kilroy Ballast, where are my wonders?